Hello and welcome, everyone. Taking right decisions is not always easy. That's probably the most difficult part. And our speaker, Karen Schmidt, the creator of the Over the Fence community, will talk about the ways to take right decisions today. Karen, you're welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex, for having me here today. After we met, by the way, at the barcamp 2 weeks ago, or 3, I don't know. And it was really nice, and we spontaneously decided to do this session today together. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to not actually see you, but feel that 20 people are in the room with us. I would like to start with a short introduction. And since I always forget this, I have my reminder slide for my introduction. I'm happy to be here. I'm the co-creator of Over the Fence together with Frank Habermann, who is actually a professor for business here in Berlin. And I'm working as a management consultant, change facilitator, and I have a long history with the Agile community, I think for more than 12 years or so, but I haven't been active so much within the community, and that's why I'm especially happy to be here today and would like to share some of our insights about decision-making. So Over the Fence, we founded in 2013, actually with the mission to make the life of people and projects better. And it's mostly about uncovering management myths and better collaboration beyond the routine. And all the tools we create are Creative Commons. We call them thinking tools. Like those are tools that help you think better. They don't tell you what to do. They just help you think about management things in a different way. We created them for teams and for managers alike. That's also a connotation of Over the Fence, is not just for one target group, but to connect different people. That's the one on the one hand side, and on the other hand, it's about bringing the wisdom and experience from different disciplines and professions together. But maybe that's enough. And today, I would love to introduce you, as announced, the decision heads as a means. That's one of our thinking tools to help you rethink decision-making and organize participation in decision-making effectively. They look colorful and nice, but there is something behind. But before we start, I would love to invite you to a little exercise. And all you need for that is the chat. I will show you a picture in a few seconds and will ask you a question. And please answer the question in the chat, but don't send your answer yet. I will give you a sign to send it so that we all send the answers together. Okay? Now, that's a picture. And the question is, what do you see on this picture? Please type into the chat. Please don't send it yet. You may influence the others. We don't want that. Okay. 3, 2, 1, a half. Please send it now. And have a look what the others are seeing on this picture. I also have a look. I like this. Amal, you sent it to me as a private message, but it's also really nice, so I will reshare it in the chat. So just have a look. Imperfection, aliens, issue avoided, carelessness. It's interesting. I have a second question for you. The second question is, what happened? Please again, write it into the chat. Don't send it yet. Okay, this should be even faster. And please send it now. And be curious what the others think has happened. At Over the Fence, we love to ask questions. And we did ask actually this question many people. And what we have realized, and you are quite well in the picture, is that the answer to the first question, what do you see on this picture? 90% of the answers include judgment, like laziness, for example. Aliens, no, it's kind of a judgment as well. So what you actually can see is a street or maybe something different and a tree and a line. If we would just observe without judgment, right? But our brain is not made for observation. Our brain tells us stories, and this rather quickly. And Daniel Kahneman, he won a Nobel Prize. He's a psychologist. He actually won a Nobel Prize for business, and you might know his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And our usual mode of thinking is fast thinking. So we discover the world by intuitive stories we see when we see a picture, a situation. We always we very quickly, without effort, have a story in mind and have an opinion about the situation. But sometimes that's not so helpful. Also in the case of decisions, sometimes we really need to think slow, which doesn't mean slow in a literal sense. It just means we really have to think, like it's effort to think. So that's the moment, for example, here, where you have this, that might not be true. That might be fake. So the first picture could have been fake as well. But the important message is we always think fast. Our brain is telling us stories and we love them. Yeah, they make our world. And this is good. This is very efficient with our energy and fast. And that's the important thing is this fast and intuitive thinking is our standard mode of perception. And we can rely on it in routine situations, in familiar situations, but only there. And in all other situations, if we are out of a routine, there is a big decision to make, which is not easy. And people get together with different backgrounds, maybe speaking different professional languages, working in different ways. We always have the situation that each of us has a story in mind, and each of us has a different story in mind. And in those situations, a misunderstanding does not have to develop. It is the natural state of things. What we have to develop, and we can, is understanding. But that's work. That takes some energy, and we need to be careful to find the right moments, like to realize the moments when we have to think slow and really work on a shared understanding. A fun fact, the answer to the second question was, what happened here? I have seen interesting explanations. There actually is a right answer to this question and only one. Do you guess which answer would be the only true answer to this question? You can share it in the chat if you have an idea. I don't know. Exactly. The interesting thing is that in business, it's really hard to say, I don't know. But sometimes it makes sense if you are in unfamiliar situations. So I invite you to not skip, I don't know, when you're up for business adventures or big challenges. It's allowed to say, I don't know. I give you permission. Especially in complex situations where we really cannot know how things are developing. So we have to research, we have to look into it. Okay, and somehow decisions are sometimes such a thing. But in case you would like to practice slow thinking, also for other situations, we have created a manifesto for slow thinking. That's just a visual reminder that if you work beyond routine, not in a functioning routine, but really beyond for collaboration, it's really helpful to ask questions before you answer things. You have you stick with the observation before moving to judgment or evaluation. And also very helpful is change of perspective, like hearing other voices before making your point of view. And the core of it, of course, is the self-reflection before criticism, so that you also can notice, am I in a routine that makes sense, or should we do something different? So that's an invitation to you. You might just hang it into your office and be careful. There is a trap for fast thinking in this manifesto. It kind of looks like the Agile Manifesto, but there is a small difference in the word before. So that's why I would like to point this out. There is not written, we value questions more than answers. It's written there, we value good questions or questions before answer. What we want is an answer in a good quality, and the means to get there are the questions. So in the end, we value the answers, but it's just a time connection. Make sense? Okay, if you like to use it or share it, it's available in many questions because so many people volunteered to translate it. You can find it on our website. I just type it into the chat. It's a bit strange because it's .com.de and this is correct. Manifesto. This is it. And there you can get the PDF with all the languages, if you like. So could be the first takeaway. But now let's get to decision making. And to make it real, I would like to invite you now to think of a decision-making process in your organization, in your project, a process you are involved in. Please think of, you can write it on a piece of paper, you don't need to share it in the chat. But it's important to have one, like a little bit more complex thing. Not some private stuff, what yogurt should I buy for breakfast? It's really an organizational decision that influences some people. Give you a few more seconds. Okay, I assume you have an idea of one. And now I have a question to you. And I ask you to share it in the chat. You can send it right away. The question is, how is it going? Is it from 0, terrible, frustrating, totally unproductive, to 5, it's great, smooth, motivating, totally productive, or anything in between? So please rate your decision-making process. Just type the number in the chat. Okay. All who have more than 4 can leave the session. Or maybe you find something interesting anyway. Okay. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I would like to, yes. I would be curious when I see the 2s or so, if you have a special challenge. So if you like, you may write it into the chat, or you can just keep it for yourself. Now, the important thing is that you now really think on this, about this example, or just have it in mind when I'm sharing a few things in the following minutes. What we have, so in order to rediscover decision-making, we would like to start with some limiting beliefs and assumptions we all have in our mind, like the assumptions, what happened there on the picture, that we have found in organizations. First thing are limiting beliefs, the top 3 limiting beliefs in decision-making. And you can check if that's the case for you. If you have others in your organization, it would be nice if you would like to share it in the chat. Number 1, decision makers are defined in the organizational chart. Number 2, anyone who is involved in a decision-making process needs to decide. And number 3, in self-organized structures, all people decide together. Limiting beliefs and assumptions means this could be true in some cases, but it doesn't have to be true. It's wrong. It's a false assumption that one of them would be true always. The invitation is really to look at the specific case and think slow. What does make sense here? Right? That's the difference. I don't say that's wrong. I just say there is no general answer. There is no universal truth about this. What is fact, what we have seen very often is that we do need a better understanding of roles in a decision-making process. And this is what I want to show to you today. But before, let's just look at the decision-making process itself, and especially at some blind spots we usually see in theory and in practice. First thing, what actually do we mean by decision-making process? Many people, there are many seminars about decision-making, there are many experts about decision-making. There are some people who mean by decision-making process, like the internal process in your brain or between your brain and your belly. So how you make decisions. Then there are group dynamics in decision-making, like decision-making process in a meeting when a group of people needs to decide together. It's all decision-making processes. What we talk about, or what we invite you to a new perspective to take, is to look at the bigger process, just to step back and see the very whole large process. And I start with a very simple visualization, which is, of course, simplified, but it helps us to see some points. So we do have a situation, an old reality we want to change into a new reality because we have a good intention to create a new effect, so to change something in our organization. So we need a decision. And this is the meeting and the things all people talk about if they are busy with decision making. We say, well, there needs something to happen before that decision. And a good decision is only a decision which can be realized, right? So it's more a really hands-on practical perspective on decision making. And the decision-making process, how I talk about it in the narrow sense, is everything that happens, including the decision is taken. And of course, to make that in a good way, we have to look at why do we take the decision, right? So that it can be realized. And usually, if you decide to have a better dialogue with your customers, like that would be the desired effect. You can choose a result. You need to implement something, a strategy, a software, a new set of questions to be asked to customers whatsoever. And it makes sense to have a good idea about both things before you start or before you make the decision. And that's actually simple, and it's like you need the clarity about why, like what is the desired effect you want to achieve, and which results would qualify as a means to this end. And if you look at that, I guess you see that this is a user story. We call it a decision story because it's more precise to talk about what we need and why, except just to talk about the goal for the decision. There is so much misunderstanding around that this really makes sense. So that's one way. We do have those questions on the decision canvas. You can use them, and if you have time, I show it to you. Otherwise, you just find it on the website. But if you have more or less clarity about those questions, like about the decision story, the next question, of course, is who are the people to be involved in the decision-making process? All people who are just in the room, or are there others? And for this, I would like to use the same picture. Of course, obvious answer is we need people who make the decision, right? But then we also need people who prepare the decision. And because then you have a good basis to make a decision. We also have people who will implement the decision, and of course, people who are going to use the result so that the effect of using the result will create the desired effect. Yes, I know it's more complex than that, but still you have that even in loops or in cycles, you always have the same rhythm. And last but not least, you see the last person there in front. You have at least one person who says, I need this decision. Let's go for it. Let's start the decision process. I have 3 lessons out of this simple picture, which are good to know. Probably you know them, but maybe. First, the quality of a decision depends on the quality of the decision process. Each decision itself is kind of irrational. So what you can work on is the quality of the process. So to have a good enough prepared decision. Second, a good decision-making process needs the participation of relevant stakeholders. But 3, participating in a decision-making process is not the same as making the decision. And I tell you, this is going to relieve people. It's going to liberate people that there are different ways of participating in a decision process. Because often you have so much pressure on a group to make a decision, and maybe it's not needed. And that's the big shift. So, because that's the key lesson is that decision maker is just one of 6 important decision-making roles, according to this, because it's not as simple as on the picture. We have created the decision heads exactly for the roles that you can compile from implementation, use, and also preparation of the decision. And this is what I like you to test. But before I just go through the 6 roles, we'll read out what is there, because fast thinking is really dangerous at this stage, because you might just read the titles and then you have an idea what this role is about. But the important thing is what the little bit more text really actually on the cards. Just listen for a moment, please. The owner. The owner is a person, or a person who would wear the owner hat, would say about themselves, I initiate the decision-making process because I need this decision. The facilitator's hat is for people who say, I design and manage the whole decision-making process, and I lead the preparation of the decision paper, like the basis for the decision, right? Experts, people who would say about themselves, my expertise and input needs to be considered for this decision. Implementer, I will execute the decision and turn it into practice. User, are people wearing the user hat would say, I will work with the result of the decision, the result, or I will be directly impacted. So in case of an organizational change or whatsoever, where you don't have a real product, it's people who are directly affected by the decision. Last but not least, the decision maker, people who will make the final decision and will be accountable for it. Can be, will be, want to be accountable for it. And this is also a relief that not everyone has to be a decision maker. You need to find decision makers, yes, but it should be a conscious choice. So in total, we have 6 roles that every decision-making process needs, actually has, we just make them transparent. And important to know, of course, it's roles, and one single person can have different hats, so can play different roles. And maybe more than one person has one hat, of course. So far, looks simple, but we say self-reflection before criticism. So we invite you to look back at your decision-making process. And I will share a link in the chat. I think Alex can stop the recording.
All right.
So that you can take a few moments. Don't switch it. Okay, thanks. So the first thing, maybe for the recording, is it always starts with self-reflection, to be aware which hats you are wearing in a specific decision-making process. And also important is that behind the little text on the cards, there are tasks which are a bit clear from the text on the cards, but we can go deeper there. The whole thing you find in the Decision Hats field guide. And now I would like to really focus on the minimum viable knowledge, so to say. It's important to understand that 3 roles are, we say, roles for leadership and management. They are responsible for the quality of the process and the decision. Like that's the owner, the facilitator, and the decision maker. And they will involve experts, implementers, and users in the process to be designed by the facilitator in agreement with the decision makers and the owner. And of course, there are potential confusions about the goals and the decision, who should be involved, and what's really the outcome of the decision. And you might remember this quote from the beginning: the facilitator should think slow when designing the process. And as we are an agile group of people, what we should do as a start is to make a first step. And the very important first step is that people in those three roles have a shared understanding of the decision need. So that they do talk about the same thing. And you can do that. We have a tool for that. It's the decision canvas. And the decision story I mentioned earlier is here a little bit more in detail, framed with 4 questions. I today just want to recommend to try it for you. If you found yourself in one of the 3 roles, you can, if you can, invite the others and just put the questions on the table and ask them, what should be decided? What should not be decided? Why is the decision needed? Like which purpose, desired effect? And for whom will the decision change the future? That's basically the decision story in a little bit easier than just in this user story format. Important is that the owner itself has clarity about his decision need. So it's actually the story of the owner. It might be that there is more than one owner for this decision process, but you find out only when you ask because you don't know sometimes. So you can use it just for the owner to gain clarity, for the owner and the facilitator to have a shared understanding, and then go to the decision makers, or if possible, you do it together with people from all roles. It's up to you, actually. So how in your context it makes sense. There is another aspect which helps to shape the decision story and also opens the room for participation. It's the matter of time. Why is sorry. Why is the decision needed now? By when is it really needed? And what are costs or consequences of delay? That's costs of delay, right? And this helps you to build up the space for your process, like the preparation meetings with stakeholders, users, implementers, or just inviting people to give a comment. The decision makers can say what they actually need to make this decision. It's really simple. It's super simple questions, but mostly people don't think about them. Franziska, I just find this question in the chat. I wouldn't say risk. If you say risk, there is like, bam, like that's like the picture with the tree. People have all different opinions about what risk actually is. It's really, what are costs or consequences of delay? So what happens if you don't take the decision by whatever you said before? Sometimes really they say nothing. We can have that 3 weeks later. It's more really to get an understanding how urgent the decision really is. And once you say risk, people go away with their minds anyway, in different directions. Okay, if you have like a picture of the decision story in context with the time, then it makes sense to talk about people. So do we have like is it clear that we are the decision makers, the people who we're talking with? Maybe they say, no, someone else should be involved or whatsoever. And also reflect about the other roles. So all of those people here like can have an opinion who should be involved. And yeah, I invite you just maybe to try it in a safe space, and you will find out the difference it makes. If you don't want to start with the big poster, we do have all those questions also on little question cards you can have in your pocket, and then just ask when need be in a meeting in a different way. as I said, all tools are Creative Commons, and you can get them on our website. You see, and on the tools page, yeah, it's an invitation to just check and test. And if you want to read more, on the website you also find the field guide. It's the e-publication in English and German, where you have stories, where you also have some inspirations for decision heads workshops, like to have a team collecting the upcoming decisions and then everyone to identify their roles, or how to use the decision heads in a retrospective of a larger decision-making process. That's usually a good start. If there are confusions, to really do a retrospective, and then you can change the course of the process on the way. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all these amazing tools and insights. So I would suggest us to switch off the recording and move on with the discussion.